Sex can be one of the greatest ways to enjoy being alive. But in the jungle of human relationships, it can be difficult to decide just who it is that you want to share such intimacies with. In trying to determine the suitability and desirability of a prospective new sexual partner, there are at least three things that you probably want to keep in mind. The first is that there are certain things you want to be able to share and exchange with this person. For instance, pleasure and intimacy. But there are other things that you probably know you don't want to share and exchange with this new person, and that's where the standard safe sex conversation comes in. More about that in a second. But the third thing, and in some ways the most important, is there are some things that you can't yet know whether or not you want to share and exchange with that person. And that's why the other safe sex conversation is important. But first for the standard safe sex conversation, because that forms the model for the other safe sex conversation. You probably know that with a new person you don't want to share or exchange certain undesirable microorganisms. And the way to minimize the likelihood of this is to have a conversation that involves a series of questions. And the main question is, do you have any sexually transmitted infections, or STIs, that you know about? There's a series of other questions that you can ask that help you decide how certain you are about the person's knowledge of their own status. Like you might ask them, have you had any symptoms of any STIs or any of those symptoms lately? When was the last time that you got tested? How often do you get tested? Do you have any other sexual partners? And what are your safe sex practices with them? And so on. Some of these questions can also help you determine the likelihood of sharing and exchanging pregnancy-producing reproductive sex cells, which are also something that most people don't want to share with a new sexual partner. Okay, so that's all pretty straightforward. Now, if you don't have the standard safe sex conversation as a matter of course, please get some practice having it. Even get some practice just with friends, because after you manage to ask those questions a few times, it becomes quite easy to do. And it allows you to protect yourself and to protect this person you're about to share this new level of intimacy with. And it also makes you a more responsible member of the extended sexual community that you enter into anytime that you have sex with somebody new. Okay, but that's a pretty straightforward conversation because it's about the sharing and exchanging of microorganisms and reproductive sex cells. But there's something even more interesting here that is where the other safe sex conversation comes in. And it's about something you don't yet know whether you want to share or exchange with this new person, and that is the kind of meaning that they give to sex. What does sex mean to them? To find that out, and to find out whether your meanings and their meanings are compatible, requires another safe sex conversation, which is just another series of questions where the main question is, what is it going to mean to you if we have sex? It's a really great question to ask, because it's not hard to imagine a scenario where one person's answer would be, well, I want to feel more bonded with you. Sex is a way to get bonded and get closer because I'm trying to decide whether I think you might be a good life partner for me. And it's possible that you might, and I want to make sure that I'm sexually compatible with my life partner. So I want us to have this experience together, but it's really about deepening our relationship to see what kind of commitment we want to make. In the meanwhile, the other person would answer the question by saying, God, sex really doesn't mean that much to me at all. It's really just a way of having fun, and I hate it when people make such a big deal out of it. Now, you can tell if one person has one meaning and the other person has the other meaning and they don't have this conversation. Afterwards, they're going to get in a lot of trouble. If instead they have the conversation and they both answer honestly, then they're able to catch each other's meanings and they can figure out, do they want to catch one another's meanings? I mean, it's like catching a disease. You can catch a meaning and it's not necessarily a meaning that you want to have. If you're that incompatible with somebody going in, you know that afterwards there's going to be some consequences, potentially disastrous ones. And so having the conversation allows you to decide whether you want to take that risk with somebody. On the other hand, if you find out that you both have very similar kinds of answers, that can be very reassuring. It can allow something in you to relax that you didn't even know was tense, so that you feel safer, more secure, more open, more able to be vulnerable going into a new sexual interaction. So it's really great to have the conversation. But it doesn't end there. It's not merely a matter of whether your meanings are opposed to one another or aligned with one another. People can have all kinds of meanings that you would never expect. And some of them you will find quite inspiring, and others you may find quite horrifying. And so you can learn from the experience about whether this is somebody that you want to engage in sex with, but you can also find out whether there's something available for you by sharing their meanings that you wouldn't have known about in advance. So here are some kinds of answers someone might give that you might or might not expect to the question. One person might say, sex for me is really just a way of getting to know people. Like, I just want to get to know you better, and it's a deep kind of way of getting to know each other so we can figure out what right relationship is for us afterwards, which might mean that we decide to keep having a sexual or romantic relationship, or that we just decide to be friends, or that we have a kind of family bond that's different but that's not about sex. I really just want to get to know you this way. I think it's an interesting way to get to know people. Somebody else might say something like, sex for me is a spiritual practice. We have become so cut off, so divided from our connection with everything. And the kind of union and communion that happens in sex, I feel can bring us back into connection with the universe, brings us closer to God. That's what sex is for me, and it's a practice that I'm interested in engaging in with you. Someone else might say, well, I am having sex right now in my life because I'm working on my sexuality. I mean, I don't want this to seem impersonal, but there's some work I'm trying to do. I'm wanting to free myself of sexual shame that I've been conditioned with. Or I want to have some positive sexual experiences to kind of override the negative sexual abuse that I've experienced in my past. Or maybe I'm trying to explore what my sexual orientation really is, and so I'm just exploring and experimenting, and I'm hoping you'd be willing to experiment with me. I think some healing could happen in our relationship. I trust you to be somebody I can heal with. Somebody else might say something like, well, sex is just another activity that friends can do together. I mean, I think we're friends. I really enjoy our friendship, and we could play checkers right now, or we could go sailing, or we could have sex. And sex is just a really rich, interesting kind of activity to engage in with friends. But I don't think it changes whether or not we're friends or what kind of relationship we have. It's just a part of our friendship. Somebody else might say something like, if I have sex with you, it means that you've passed the test. I don't feel that safe with many people. And for me to be interested in engaging sexually with you means you've passed the test and I feel that safe with you. And so I'm assuming we're deepening into a much greater level of commitment by having sex with each other, because I'm finally being vulnerable with you in a way that I rarely am with anybody. And there are many more kinds of meanings that somebody might give. In fact, somebody might say something like, I'm really not that interested in sex with you. I'm not even particularly attracted to you, but I really love you and I care about our connection. I can tell sex matters to you, so I kind of want to do it for you. I'm not really self-sacrificing. It's not that it will be bad for me. It's just that I'm really just orienting toward you and I want to do it because it's something that you'll enjoy. Now, all of these are very different from one another. And like, again, I said, some of them may be inspiring to you, like, oh, I'd like to try that out. And some of them may be horrifying to you, like, oh, I don't want to go anywhere near that. But you'll know more about it if you have the conversation and then ask a further series of questions to know more about what that meaning means to them. Questions about, like, do you expect that we'll sleep over afterwards? What do you expect will happen tomorrow if we have sex today or tonight? Is there an assumption about level of commitment? Is there an assumption about exclusivity, about not having sex with other people if we have sex with each other? Is there a kind of frequency that you're going to expect us to date or have sex with if we do have sex now and we both like it? These are all kinds of things that you'd like to know in advance that allows you to make a conscious choice about what you're going into. Calling any of these conversations safe sex conversations is kind of a funny thing to call them. It's not really about safety, although that is one component of what we're talking about. Really what they are is just sex conversations. And it's really good to have sex conversations. And the only reason we don't have them a lot more, especially with new prospective partners, is because we've learned to carry so much shame about our sexualities and about the nature of sex. Having open, honest conversation about sex not only allows us to be safer and protect ourselves and each other, but it just allows us to get to know each other better and more deeply before entering into this kind of extraordinary intimacy with one another. If you can't have this kind of intimacy verbally and on the level of meanings, on the level of what's really true for you, on the level of honesty, then it's harder to have real intimacy when engaged physically with one another. If you can have this conversation in advance, sex is much better. It can go much deeper. It can be much richer, and you can be much more relaxed entering into the process, which allows you to be much more excited about it. So have the standard safe sex conversation, but also ask people, what is it going to mean to you if we have sex?